Hello, this is Todd with East Coast Leisure. Today I'm going to go over a few of the first steps to getting your pool started after it's been installed. We get a lot of customers that ask, new pool customers and just not familiar with the process. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview of the different parts of the equipment, so you know if you call in and ask a question. Sometimes somebody calls a product a filter, and we call a filter, they mean skimmer. So first thing I want to do is just show you some of the different parts, and then we'll kind of go over how they work. So here we go. Okay, so first I'm going to tell you about the skimmer. The skimmer that's on this pool is called a hydromatic skimmer. The hydromatic skimmer is a little longer than a traditional skimmer. So before I get into the details, this is a standard skimmer. It's got a square faceplate. This is called a wide mouth skimmer. That's just the traditional skimmer. It's not very long like the hydromatic. The hydromatic is deeper, and the reason why is because it has bags that allow for more debris to be collected. So you have that preliminary large bag, and then you have this secondary bag that collects all the pollen and small bugs and all that other stuff that you don't want going straight into your filter, because it's just going to clog your filter. So what we do is we would dump that out and put it back in, and then you have less debris going into your filtration system. So the hydromatic skimmer, unique to East Coast Leisure in our market. So if you have one of these types of skimmers, remember that you will periodically need to replace that bag, which is with a new bag. Usually once every spring, we recommend it'll start to wear out. The basket that's inside of it, the primary larger basket, usually lasts a little bit longer, but you won't probably have to replace that unless you lose it over the winter. The next part of the system I'm going to tell you about is the pump. And the pump is the mechanism that draws the water in from the skimmer and out to the filter. So in this case, this is what we call a dual port pump. Doesn't really mean much to you as a customer, but it can be attached to multiple styles of filtration, whether there is a horizontal or vertical discharge. So let's say down the road you buy another filter, and that filter only connects on the side. Well, this has got to connect a port. I'm not going to take it out because there's water in it, but if you cut the gate valves off, you can take this off and connect it to what we call a horizontal port. This pump rather is a special energy saver pump that we offer. It has two speeds, a low speed, you can hear it running, and then I'm gonna see if I can't show that, but that's the high speed, middle, and the low speed. You can hear it a little bit. Hopefully you can see that, but you can hear the difference. So most people run their pumps on low speed the majority of the time because you're just trying to circulate water, and then when you want to vacuum, or if you just put chemicals in, then you can run it on the high speed. And the reason we have that on a cartridge filter is because the cartridge filter can allow water to flow through it at low speed or high speed, whereas a sand filter typically needs to run water through it at a high rate. So if you had a 2-speed pump, you would just run it all most of the time on high speed with a sand filter. Okay, after the pump is the filter, and the filter, again, the water flows out of the pump and into the filter, and in the filter, in the case of this simple clean filtration, water is going to flow through the outside and into, and I'll show you a skeleton of a black diamond filtration cartridge. So the water is going to be flowing into these pleats, and then it comes, once the clean water passes through, it comes out to the top of the port, and that water is then pushed back to the pool. So just sorry, I don't know, I was pointing in that filming. So this goes back to the pool. So this cartridge element is a black diamond cartridge. So just to give you another little bit of knowledge on this, a lot of times we have customers come in and they say, you know, I don't want a cartridge filter because I've been told they don't work very well. This is a cartridge filter for your traditional box store Intex pool. Look, you see the size of that. So this is usually what people are familiar with when they say cartridge filter. Black diamond filter is not really a typical cartridge filter. It's got a rigid skeleton. It's thicker. The fiber's a little strong. It's a lot stronger. It's got it's a lot thicker, and it's larger. It's got 120 square feet of filtration, as opposed to a typical Intex pool. It's probably got like 25 square feet of filtration. So it's significantly more area for it to collect debris. So again, the filter in this case, a simple clean filter, allows water to go through, and then once it comes out clean, it goes back to the pool. This is a sand filter. So if you have a sand filter, sand filters filter by similar to a cartridge, where the water comes in from the pump and goes in, and what it does is this sand filter is filled 3/4 of the way full. It's probably somewhere right around here, and the water flows through the sand naturally, you know, collecting all of the debris, particles and stuff. And then at the bottom of the sand bed is a series of fingers that have small grates in them, and they take the water back and send it to the pool. I don't have this one connected. We're just showing you for this purpose. So if you have a sand filter, as I mentioned earlier on one of the prior videos, you don't need to run it on low speed as much because you're trying to get a high rate of water to go through it. But you can run it on low speed. It's just we typically tell people to run it on the high speed or use a single speed pump with a sand filter. Sand filters have a head with several different stages on a dial. As you can see here, we have filter or filtration. So normally when you're running your sand filter, it's going to stay on filtration. Highly recommend not trying to change this gear while the pump is on, because you're fighting off the flow of the water. You break the handle off, you'll probably end up spending $150 replacing this head. So turn off the pump if you're ever going to do the dial. It's pretty, I mean, I'd like to say it's self-explanatory. I know I work in a pool store, so to me everything is I'm familiar with it already. But if you've never used a sand filter, like I said, filtration's where you're going to use it most of the time. If you have, let's say you're vacuuming the pool and it's lots of debris on the bottom, you can actually vacuum it onto waste. So what you do is, again, you turn off the pump, turn it on to waste, and what that does is it doesn't go back into the pool. Rather, you run a backwash hose out this other port and into your yard somewhere where you don't mind water draining out, and you're sucking the water straight out of the pool through the vacuum head. So you're going to be taking large amounts of debris. Rather than filling up your sand filter and having to rinse it out periodically, you're just taking all that debris straight out of the pool. So that's vacuum. Whenever you hear somebody say just vacuum onto waste, that's what they mean. Turn it on to waste, run the vacuum, suck things right out and shoot it right out into the yard. Backwash is common, it's probably the second most common dial. Backwash is basically reversing the cycle of the water flow so that, again, it's going to come out of your backwash hose, which would be here if I had one. And it's instead of the water going downward to the fingers, it's going to kind of come upward and out, and it's going to get rid of all of that debris that's sitting on the surface of the sand and shoot it out, which just basically is like a cleaning mode for the sand filter. So you do that, you'll have this little dial right here. When you put it on the backwash, that dial, typically if it's really dirty in there, that's going to turn green. You'll watch it as the water's flowing out, and as it slowly goes back to a clearer color, then you can turn off the pump and put it back onto filtration. Rinse is actually, I should have said, you go from backwash to rinse, because what rinse does is it kind of gets all the gunk out of the plumbing lines before you go back to filtration. Because one of the most common comments I get from people that have a sand filter is that I think I got a leak. It's shooting dirt back into the pool. Well, what happens is the dirt gets trapped in the plumbing lines in between the backwash or the waste and the filtration, and then it just ends up shooting back into the return. Sometimes little pieces of particles come out as well, and when that happens, typically customers say, I think I got something wrong with the filter because it's shooting sand back into the pool. Well, it's not really shooting sand, it's just shooting the debris that got collected in there. You're very rarely going to have it actually shoot the sand back into the pool. You'd have to have something happen in the bottom of the unit for that to happen. So so a couple other things. These are more for winterizing, but you'll see that there is a winter mode. That's this mode right here. It's actually just lifting up the hinge so that it's not resting on a there's a gasket underneath there, and if you leave it sitting for that whole fall, you'll end up you might wear out that gasket. It might cause the gasket to stick to the bottom of it and come apart. And then you got closed, which is just basically what it says. It's closed. Very rarely do you need to use closed for anything. So that's the primary gist of a sand filter. The only other thing I might mention is you're going to replace the sand about once every 2 to 3 years. You'll take the head off. You use a garden hose, try to rinse it all out, and then you come into East Coast Leisure and buy a couple more bags of sand. The next part of our system is the water care system. So most people are familiar with chlorine. We do not promote chlorine. We sell chlorine, but nowadays chlorine is kind of it's a old-fashioned way to maintain your pool. It's the harshest chemical you can use. That's why they use it, because it kills bacteria, but it also fades liners. It causes corrosion on your equipment, and it's for people with sensitive skin or eyes. You all know, if you've been into a public pool that's high in chlorine, it's uncomfortable. So what we use is a mineral-based system. So and that's the other thing. A lot of people know of salt systems. Salt systems are also basically they convert salt, sodium chloride, into chlorine. So they're kind of a chlorine system, but they do it in a little softer way. But we decided we would work with our above grounds with a mineral-based mineral water. So this system, the simple salt and the simple, the mineral tablet, they are both copper-based. Copper can purify water naturally, similar to like a stream. We use it in conjunction with several other chemicals that are either non or low chlorine based, and I'm not going to get into too much detail because that's a whole video in itself. But I just want to say that this, if somebody asks you what type of water care system you have, and you see this on your pool, this is the simple salt, and this is the mineral tablet. So you can tell the customer what you or the employee, if you're at our store getting your water tested, which water care system you have. So we'll get into the details on how they work later. But that's it. That's the water care system. Once you get past the water care system, the water's going to flow directly back to the pool through what we call the return. And I'll get into this gate valve here in a minute. But the return is the jet eyeball that shoots the water back into your pool. So anyone ever says to make sure that your pool's running properly, just put your hand over that return, and if the water's flowing through there, then at least you know there's circulation in the pool. So that's the return. And actually, while I'm here, I'll explain this gate valve. So gate valves are literally like a kind of like a guillotine. You want to make sure that they're open when in use. It's hard to do this with a videoing in your hand, but lift it up, the water flows through. Push it down, the water cannot flow through. So you would shut this down if you were winterizing, or if you wanted to take your cartridge filter out and you didn't want the water to flow back at you. You shut both of the gate valves, and then you will reduce the amount of water flowing. You're still going to get a little bit of water that will overflow out just from being in the plumbing lines, but it'll keep you from having to fight it off while you're cleaning out your filter. All right, this is the best way I could explain our different entry systems, because we don't have them fully assembled here in the store. So I'm going to start with the most common one. This is what we call it's a deluxe entry system. The step portion goes inside the pool. The ladder portion goes outside, and as you can see on the cutout, that exterior portion lifts up as a safety device so that smaller children can't climb into the pool. So that's a common entry system for us. We also offer the A-frame style. It also has an exterior lift so that similar to the other one where it lifts up so the kids can't get in. Then if you have a need for something pretty heavy duty, this is a gated system. So the inside of it goes into the pool similar to the deluxe entry system. The outside is basically another deluxe entry system, but with a gate on the outside and a little more durable handrails for, let's say you have elderly people or a handicapped person or children that you just want to be able to get in. Or some people have dogs and they like to walk their dogs in and out of the pool. So that you could upgrade to that if you wanted to. Especially if you already have this system, you could basically buy the other portion and upgrade to it. So let's say you have a deck, or you're building a deck. We call this the wedding cake step, but if you ask, it's also called a step in a box. It rests inside the pool. It has a handrail. That little paddle that's near the very top is the piece that you would adhere to a deck by screwing it down. It's not very well fastened, but it's weighted, or you can put weight inside of it so it won't move. But it kind of just sits freely inside the pool. This is a deck ladder. It goes inside the pool as well. It's basically half of an A-frame ladder. You can mount it onto the deck with there's some small exterior arms that kind of bolt down to a deck. So these are two options that you could have if you already have an A-frame or an entry system and you're planning on building a deck down the road. You can change over to one of those, or you can actually just take the inside portion of the entry system and remove the outside and use that as your deck entry system. Okay, now that I've explained how all the different components work, I might kind of give you a quick rundown on what to do when your pool's just finished filling up. So first you want to do, and I can't show you from this angle, but you want to make sure that the water level is about halfway up the skimmer line. You'll be able to tell basically there's a door in there, and when that door starts to flap or when it lifts up, that's kind of an indication that you've got it at the right height. If it's low, if you ever end up and it's low, it'll suck air in, and then it won't filter properly. So it can be high. If you get a lot of rain and the water's above the skimmer, that's fine. You don't have to drain it. You don't have to. You might drain it just for the sake of allowing the skimmer to do what it does, which is skim. You do that by getting the kids into the pool and pushing the water out that way. You don't have to actually, run out to the house or to the pool and drain it down to halfway. So let's say the water level's halfway up the skimmer. Again, this is a hydromatic skimmer, so the water's going to flow down into the pump and back to the pool. As I mentioned in prior videos, make sure all the gate valves are open. If they're not, and the water, turn the pump on sure that you have a dedicated 115 outlet. I know a lot of times when people put a pool in, they're waiting for the electrician to come in. They run it on an extension cord. They say, I'm going to get one soon. It's very important that you get it because it will die if it's run on an extension cord for any extended period of time. So make sure you get that dedicated electric source, and you can plug your water care system into that, or your light or something else, but you just want it to be dedicated. So then I turn on the pump. That's the low speed, and that's the high speed. Water's flowing from the skimmer into the pump. The head of the pump, you'll see the water in there. Gravity will basically cause the pump to prime. In an in-ground pool, it works a little differently. You have to prime a pump. If you ever hear somebody say, I got to prime the pump, it's because you're sucking it from a lower level up. But with gravity and an above ground, it'll prime. And another common question I always hear is I've got air in the air bubbles in here. That does not matter. If it's dry, then you might have to question whether or not something's wrong. But if you just see a couple air pockets on the lid, that they'll either work their way out or they'll be fine there. So as the water flows in there, there's also a secondary air lint trap that catches debris that may have somehow made its way through the filter. Let's say you ran the filter without the basket for a period of time. Take that out. The water flows through. Check your pressure gauge right now and see where it reads. I know you can't see it from here, but the pressure gauge on a cartridge filter is right here. On a sand filter, it would be somewhere around the side. On a low speed, it's going to be nearly 1 psi or 0. So that's not uncommon. That just means that there's very little pressure because it's running on a low speed. When you run it on high speed, this one is at 10 psi. If you get to 20, that's an indication that it's time to turn the pump off, take the filter out, wash it off with a garden hose. High pressure garden hose is adequate, and then put it back in. And these filters will last you probably a year, maybe 2 if you're good, or if you don't have a lot of debris, but we usually recommend either replacing it once a year or at the very least buying a second one so that you can exchange them. Take one out, clean it while the other one's doing its job. The water flows through the filter as we explained in the prior videos, and you get to the water care system. The simple clean system is when the chamber is functioning, the active pump is really being lit. So you can dial, I think, again, we'll get into water care in a later video, but you'll dial the water, you'll set the dial and allow it to flow through back to the pool. And again, making sure that the gate valve is closed. The only thing I think I can go over that I had not gone over yet is, again, I'm going to shut these gate valves and just show you how to take this off. There's a lock right here. So you push down on the lock, and you spin this. And I know I might get wet. And by the way, there's a bleeder. I forgot to mention this too. I open this bleeder, and that'll cut off the pressure. It'll also make it easier for me to do what I'm doing. And then I'll take it out. Look at that. This is pollen season, so you can see there's a lot of pollen caught onto this filter right now. So hopefully later on we'll take it out and clean it off and put it back in. I'm going to move on with the video. So I'll close it again, and don't over tighten it. The locking mechanism will snap when it's tight. So listen for the snap. There you go. Tighten the bleeder valve again, and I can cut it back on. For the operation of the filtration equipment, that's pretty much the gist of it. Again, I got another video we're going to do. We'll go over the water care. So that's it for now. Thanks. sorry, I forgot one very important part. That is to make sure you open the gate valves back up after you took your filter out so that the water can flow. You'll find, again, if you don't feel the water flowing through, there's a problem somewhere. So that's always a good rule of thumb to remember, to make sure the water's flowing through it. Whether it's at low speed or high speed, it should be pushing water out.